All right, Isabella, we are live on YouTube and it looks like we've got some participants joining. So you can go ahead and start your program in, I'd say shoot for 2 minutes and we'll be set.
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Erica. Have a good day.
You too.
Thanks. All right. Looks like we have quite a few people joining already, and I think it is time to get started. So welcome everyone and good morning. I am so excited to welcome you to Point Lobos State Natural Reserve this morning. We're in a beautiful California state park, and we are going to be looking around the park and talking about some of the amazing habitats that are found here. We'll be learning about some of the animals you can find in the park too, and also some of the protection that is here in the park, how we are keeping all of these animals, plants, all the forms of life here safe and healthy. So it is going to be a fun program today, and I'm so excited to get to show you around. And I did want to introduce myself too. My name is Isabella, and I work for California State Parks as an interpreter. So that's like a fancy word for a teacher. And I have the really fun job of getting to welcome visitors like you who are virtual this morning and visitors here in person to the park and get to talk to them about all the cool things that this park, Point Lobos, has to offer. So it is going to be a fun time with you this morning. And I did want to ask how you all are doing. I know that we're in kind of a webinar format, so unfortunately, I can't see you right now or hear you, but just if we could do a show of thumbs, I would love to know how you're feeling, and I will give you a thumbs up. I am feeling pretty good this morning, and I hope you are too. Okay, seeing a thumbs up in the chat. Wonderful. I'm so glad. All right. Well, without further ado, I think we should take our first official glance at Point Lobos. You can kind of see the background behind me. Hopefully you are seeing the view as you were joining the meeting, but let's really take a look at what is happening right now. Oh, and it looks like we actually have a harbor seal that just popped up in the water. Maybe you can see it kind of swimming in the water. It's next to some of the seaweed or the kelp and pretty close to shore. So take a really close look at the camera. I don't think I can zoom in, unfortunately. We just had a harbor seal pop up. That's one of the common marine mammals in this area. Oh, it looks like it actually has a fish. Oh, that's so cool. Right now we can just kind of see the head of this harbor seal that popped up. So as we're looking around, taking in the beautiful views of this park, I would love if you could make some observations about what you're noticing about Point Lobos. So what can you notice? What can you see right now? And if you would like, and if it works for you, I would love for some student observations to be put into the chat. I'm seeing from Lindsay, it's very quiet. Yeah, it's a really peaceful day. It's cold, yeah, definitely pretty overcast, foggy, I would say. It's probably around 65 degrees. I'm seeing a Rocky from Teresa. Let's see. Looks like really fresh water. Debbie saw a bird flying and landing in the water. Lindsay noticing water is coming from the cracks in the rocks. Plants are in the water from Nikki Mora. Lindsay said it looks like it's going to be a storm. Yeah, we actually had some rain last night. So we're kind of seeing the tail end of some of that rainy weather. And I'm seeing a question about where exactly are we? And I will get to that in just a second. That's a great question. We're seeing some seaweed, fresh water. Maybe you're seeing the water moving. It might look pretty clean to you. There's not that much trash floating around. Lots of rocks. Oh, and it looks like I got flipped. Oh, 1 second. Maybe you can hear the crow in the distance. Oh, wonderful place for a picnic. That is a great observation too. Okay, I'm gonna turn my camera back on. Hopefully it looks like I got back to back to normal. Thanks for waiting, everyone. All right. So I loved hearing these and reading these observations, and I'm seeing in the chat too, Lindsay has been here 3 or 4 times. So that is so cool to get to welcome you back virtually this morning. So all these observations we've been making about Point Lobos, I've loved hearing them. We were noticing all this water that's behind me, and maybe this reminded you of a lake or a pond. As you can see, we can look at the trees in the background. You're noticing some of the rocks next to me. But this is actually, it's not exactly a lake. This is part of the Pacific Ocean. So my next question is, if this is part of the Pacific Ocean, what kind of water do you think we're looking at? Do you think it is fresh or salt water that we would be observing right now? Yeah. So yes, it looks like a lot of you have got it. This is salt water. So this is going to be some cold, salty ocean water. And the water is going to be pretty cold. I'm guessing it's probably around 55 degrees right now. So really chilly, and you'd probably need some sort of wetsuit to get into the water. So we're also noticing the seaweed, or something that kind of looks maybe even like you thought it might be trash. It's this patchy stuff that's right behind me. And this seaweed is called kelp. It's specifically a lot of giant kelp. There might be some bull kelp in there. And this seaweed makes up this amazing underwater forest habitat in the park. This is called the Kelp Forest. So we are actually, it's like we would be looking down at the canopy of trees. That's kind of what we're looking at as we are looking down at the kelp. And I got distracted a little bit. There is a harbor seal that popped up again. Maybe if you can see where it's pretty close to the seagull right now. I think the seagull actually might be waiting for some of the scraps of fish. So that is so exciting that the harbor seal is coming pretty close to shore. Hopefully it'll pop back up again in a second. So I want to have us keep an eye out for some sea animals today because we are next to the ocean. We might see more of these harbor seals. Maybe we will see some more shorebirds or birds that like the ocean, like these seagulls. Maybe we'll see pelicans, or we also see great blue herons here a lot. And oh, I did see in the chat that a question about, is this the main habitat for harbor seals? And this is a really common habitat that we can find harbor seals in. So yes, they really do like this kelp forest. It provides lots of food for them. And it is this area we're in is called Whalers Cove. It's very sheltered. That's why we're not seeing really big ocean waves. There's not a lot of wind that can come into this area. So the harbor seals like these calm conditions too, as well as the kelp forest. All right. So all of these different natural features, the water behind me making up the ocean, the trees in the distance and the rocks, all the animals here, they're all part of beautiful Point Lobos State Natural Reserve. And I wanted to pull up a map so we can really see where Point Lobos is. And I will give you a warning. Sometimes when I try to share my screen, my camera will flip around again. And also sometimes Zoom crashes and kicks me out of the meeting. So please bear with me if any technical difficulties happen. I will try my best to get back on track. So let's pull up that map. All right, here we go. So Point Lobos is a California state park that is right in the middle of California. It is on the central coast, so we're in the middle of the state, and we are really close to a little town called Carmel, and we are also close to a big city called Monterey. So if you've ever heard of or visited the Monterey Bay Aquarium, we're about like a 15 to 20 minute drive. So we're in an area with lots of fun things to do. And that is great to see that some of you have visited the aquarium. It is a really cool place to be in. So maybe you can take a look at the map and you can see and try to guess if you are close or far away from Point Lobos right now. So maybe you can try to find where you are in the state of California. Maybe you're close or far. Try to see if you can make that guess. Okay, seeing a few different things. Sometimes it's a few hours away, or maybe it's really far. You're really far, maybe you're down in Southern California. But I do hope you get the chance to visit Point Lobos eventually. It is such a special place on the coast. And a lot of people like to call this state park the crown jewel of the California state park system. So it is considered by a lot of people to be one of the most beautiful and spectacular California state parks. There's so much to see, lots of different habitats, which we'll be talking about today. And there's also lots to do. Visitors can go hiking, you can go for a bike ride. This is actually the area I'm standing in. It's one of the picnic areas, so you can have a nice picnic next to the water too. And you can also go into the water. So this area, Whalers Cove, is the only area in the whole park where you are actually allowed to go swimming. And maybe that seems a little strict, but and I'll take the map down. That might be a little strict, but a lot of other areas in Point Lobos, they have really big rocks and some big waves. And here in Whalers Cove, just like how the seals and even the sea otters like this area because it's very calm and sheltered, that is how people are able to go swimming here. So you can talk to the park and go snorkeling or scuba diving. You can also launch a kayak here. So there are a few things you can do in the park to really get underwater and see all the amazing ocean life that is down there. So as visitors are doing all these fun things, whether they are getting to go in the water or they're going on land and just going for a hike or having a picnic, they are exploring some of the amazing habitats that are here in the park. And I'd like you to raise your hand if you have ever heard the word habitat before. Who has heard of that? So hopefully you have heard of the word habitat before. And I want you to try to think to yourself, what do you think a habitat means? What pops into your head when you think about what a habitat is? What is a habitat? Okay. Yeah, so I'm seeing some great things in the chat. A home, something where an animal or plant lives. That's what I like to think of too. So it sounds like a lot of you have really got it down about what a habitat is. So I like to think of a habitat as the natural home of an animal, plant, or any living thing. So anything from the tiniest fly to the biggest blue whale, they all have their own habitats, including us humans. So examples of human habitats could be small towns, maybe a big city, or even a farm. And the habitats here in Point Lobos and kind of going out to this general area we're in, which is the Monterey Bay area, they can range from the sandy beaches that we can go down to all the way to the deep, dark bottom of the ocean. So there's lots of types of homes for animals here. And a lot of times, these animals and plants and other forms of life, they have specific adaptations. They have specific tools that they have evolved to have where it really helps them to survive in that certain habitat. So as we were looking around, making our first observations, you all were already noticing some of the amazing habitats here in the park. I was hearing you all notice the trees that are in the distance. So maybe you can notice those trees. A lot of them are covered with fog right now. And you might see some hills too, way off in the distance that are covered with trees. And these trees make up this amazing forest habitat in the park. So a lot of these trees are Monterey pine trees. We have some Monterey cypress trees and live oak trees too. And often this forest habitat, you could find lots of amazing animals. A lot of your typical forest animals can be found there. Animals like deer, squirrels. Yes, there are some snakes that are found here in the park. We don't have any rattlesnakes, so there aren't really any dangerous snakes to look out for. But we do have king snakes and some garter snakes that can be found here in the park. So those snakes could also be found in the forest habitat or even in the rocky habitat that is next to me. I was going to point that out next because even though these rocks might look pretty empty, I'm going to pan us around so you can kind of see some of the rocks and the boulders that are next to me. These rocks on land are also home to lots of little animals. So we can find animals, especially when it gets nice and warm and sunny out. We can see animals like lizards, bunnies. I like to see lots of little sparrows hopping around in the rocks too. When we get closer to the water, especially like right where the water is splashing on the rocks, we will start to see lots of ocean life. A lot of times I see different types of crabs, limpets, and lots of types of seaweed that are growing on these rocks. So lots of things in Point Lobos are full of life. You just have to take a closer look and be patient a lot of times, and you'll notice lots of animals showing up in these different habitats. So these habitats on land, the rocks that are next to me, the trees in the distance making up the forest, they're all part of the California State Park. Point Lobos State Natural Reserve is the full title. And this California State Park is a place where so many visitors, I think I forgot to mention earlier, this park is one of the most popular, it is one of the most visited California state parks. It gets over 600,000 visitors every single year. So many people like to come and check out this park. They can do these fun activities we've been talking about, explore these habitats, but they do have to follow some rules and take some actions to make sure they are leaving the park like they found it. They're cleaning up after themselves and being respectful of this place. My next question for you all is, what are some things that you think you should do when you visit a California state park? What are some actions you can take to respect the environment and keep the animals and plants safe? Okay, I'm seeing in the chat, keeping the park clean, picking up litter. That is a really important one. We want to pick up all of our trash. Hiking and staying on the trails is super important. Not petting or touching any animals is great too. Yeah, seeing some great things that you all are submitting about ways that we can protect these beautiful places. I'm seeing a great one in the chat about not feeding the animals. That is super important. And we can also, I was also seeing a chat about helping people. So one thing we can do is try to spread awareness about how we can respect this park. First, by setting an example with our actions about, not leaving our trash everywhere, not feeding the animals, but reminding people to also follow these rules and try to respect this place. Yeah, so many great ideas you all have about what we can do as we visit California state parks. And it is super important to respect these places because we are visiting the home of all of these wild animals and plants. So this was their home first. So we really want to be respectful and make sure that we can not bother these animals and plants as we're visiting them. We just want to make sure to view them from afar and make sure that we are not, we are being mindful, especially, yeah, even with where we're walking, staying on the trails, trying to watch our step so we don't step on any little critters, especially if we're visiting habitats like the tide pools. So that is super great, Lindsay. All right. So we have this California State Park protecting the forest and the rocks on land. But we also have another layer of protection, another kind of protection here in Point Lobos. We have something called a marine protected area, or MPA for short. And this marine protected area is kind of similar to an underwater park. So this marine protected area is like an underwater park in the ocean where we can see lots of amazing ocean life. So my next question, we've talked about things we can do on land, why it's important to protect habitats and animals and plants on land. What are some things, actually, let's say, what are some reasons why you think that protecting the oceans is important? Why do you think we have created this ocean protection? Yeah, seeing some great things already. Protecting the food chain or the food web. Protecting animals, especially maybe you're thinking endangered animals. That's a kind of animal where those they don't have that many animals left. Their populations are pretty small. So those are super, super important to try to protect. So animals can be safe is a great one. You might also be thinking of ways that humans are affected when the oceans and the land are in danger or not healthy anymore. So one great thing about ocean protection is that when we put these marine protected areas in place, which is really one tool we can use to help the ocean rebound. We want to get the populations of animals. A lot of times they are pretty small right now. They have got lower over the last few hundred years. So we are creating these little safe pockets in the ocean that have some rules that you can follow. So just like for California state parks, we can protect them by following rules. Here in this marine protected area, the fancy name is Point Lobos State Marine Reserve. There's no fishing allowed. So in this marine protected area, which wraps around the park, so it's just along the coast, there's no fishing. There's also some rules about no collecting. We can't collect any rocks or shells or any other natural objects. And one of the big reasons for this is I mentioned earlier that this is a super popular park. So many people are visiting this park, over 600,000 visitors every single year. I'm going to challenge you with a really big mental math problem. And let's just try to visualize this. What would happen if 600,000 visitors were each coming to the park and taking 3 seashells home with them? What would happen if those 600,000 people each took a few shells back home with them? I know these are some really big numbers. Mm. Well, yeah, I'm seeing some great ideas already. Maybe there wouldn't be any more shells, or maybe there would only just be a few remaining. If that happened, all those people, every single visitor in the park was taking a few shells home, that would actually be 1.8 million seashells being taken away. Yeah, there you go. So almost actually almost 2 million seashells would be taken if people were not following this no collecting rule. And maybe you could imagine if you're a little hermit crab or another animal that depends on these shells, it would be super hard to survive when these homes that you needed in your habitat were suddenly gone. So, we like to encourage visitors to follow these rules and be aware of these rules before they even visit, so they can make sure that there's enough resources here, rocks or shells or live animals here, um, for both the life here in the park and for visitors in the future to enjoy. It's important to keep that in mind too. So that is one of the great things about this marine protected area. It adds this extra layer of ocean protection to the park. And it is why we can see so many amazing animals. I was mentioning, hopefully some of you were able to see the harbor seals, or the one harbor seal that had popped up earlier in the program. And one great example of why this marine protected area is so important are these harbor seals. So I want to turn us around. Unfortunately, I don't think I can really zoom into this program, so I'm just going to get us just pointing in the general direction. So off in the beach, if you look way in the distance, maybe you can see some waves that are crashing on the beach. And right now, there are, I would say, probably around 6 or 7 harbor seals off in the distance. And I'm going to pull up a picture of a harbor seal so we can see a little better. So my screen is going to move a little bit. So this is what harbor seals look like up close. And they are a really amazing animal to get to see here in Point Lobos State Marine Reserve in this marine protected area. And they are part of one of the animals of this kelp forest habitat, this seaweed habitat that is behind us. And they are very, very cute, I agree. And we can see this mom harbor seal and the baby. So if you ever have the chance to visit Point Lobos in the springtime, especially right now, April and May, you would be able to see these harbor seals on the beaches with their babies. So this is the time of the year when harbor seals have their babies. And in the water, when they're swimming in the ocean, these harbor seals are like athletes. They are really good swimmers. They're very fast. They are really adapted to live in the ocean environment. But they can breathe air. So they actually come onto the beaches to have their babies and nurse their babies. So when they come on land, even though it gives them a break from swimming, it makes them very vulnerable. They're not as fast on land. And they are extra afraid of humans, noises, other animals when they're on land, because they just know that they are slower. They're out of their the environment that they're really adapted for. So we can view these harbor seals in this marine protected area, but it's super important to be respectful of these animals, because if we do things like trying to approach them, yelling at them, seeing how if we can get their attention by throwing things at them, that can really stress them out. Sometimes they will go back into the water and leave their babies behind. So it's really, really important to make sure that when we're visiting these marine protected areas in California state parks, we can view these animals from a respectful distance, because it really does impact their survival when we're being respectful. All right. So it looks like, okay, we have still some time left, and you're gonna see behind me, it looks like we have two scuba divers actually in a boat. They are going out. I'm gonna turn my camera so you can see them a little better. So I had mentioned scuba diving is one of the really fun things that you can do here in Point Lobos. And sometimes these scuba divers will actually take their boat out and they will go deeper into the water and get to explore the under water environment. So that is what you're seeing right behind me, some people going off to have fun on this Friday morning in the park. So for the ocean habitats here in this marine protected area, we've been looking at the kelp forest, seeing the seaweed habitat. If we were to go underwater, this kelp forest would be growing super tall, about 60 or 70 feet tall, and would be home to hundreds of different animals. We would also be able to see, especially this is an area in the park where there's a lot of cliffs, but there's another great area in the park called Westin Beach where we could see a lot of these rocks kind of in the distance. We would see that they form these rocky tide pools. So that's another one of the main ocean habitats in the park, are these rocky tide pools. We also have some sandy beaches, and I apologize that you can't really see them, but they are kind of where we can see those cliffs in the distance. There's some water washing up onto the shore and washing up onto those sandy beaches. So we're surrounded by multiple amazing ocean habitats. So I'm going to, I think it's time to show some pictures. What ocean animals could you find here in the park, in these habitats? So I wanted to take a look at these animals. Let's try to see if we can recognize this animal, and then what kind of habitat could this animal live in? So give me one moment, I'm gonna pull up some more pictures. Okay, here we go. Here is the first animal I wanted to show you. So try to see if you can recognize this animal. And do you think this might live in the kelp forest habitat, or maybe you think it might live in the rocky shoreline habitat here? This picture has a good hint about what kind of habitat this otter might like. Yeah. Okay, it looks like a lot of you have got it. This is the southern sea otter. It is an animal that a lot of visitors really hope to see when they come to the park. There's about 30 to 100 of these sea otters that can be found in the park on any given day. They move around a lot, so sometimes you'll see more on some days than other days. But these sea otters are actually the top predators in the kelp forest. So they are really important because they help to maintain this balance in the kelp forest food web. And in this picture, we can see that this sea otter has pulled seaweed over it. It looks like it's pulled some eelgrass over it. And this is something they do to kind of create like a seat belt so that they don't float away in the water. So a lot of times when I come over to this area in Whalers Cove, I can see sea otters resting. And if I look closely, a lot of times these sea otters have pulled kelp over themselves so that they don't float away. They'll also do that for their babies so that the babies don't float away either. Okay. Here's the next animal. This animal is a bit of a tricky one because it is specific. But I want you to see if you can recognize this animal. And do you think it lives in the kelp or in the rocks? Okay. Yes, it is a type of ray. This is the bat ray. So this bat ray is an animal that you could find in the kelp forest. And this bat ray will kind of glide along the bottom of the seafloor. And it gets its name because its head is kind of shaped like a bat. And I have never seen one of these animals myself in the park, but I have seen them in aquariums. So this could be an animal that you could see in, I think I've seen them in the Monterey Bay aquarium. They can be pretty hard to see just if you're standing on the shore, since they do like to stick to the bottom of the sea floor for the most part. But that is the bat ray, another cool animal found in the kelp. How about this animal? Who can recognize this type of animal? And where do you think this could live? Or where do you think it could hunt? In the kelp or the rocks? Okay. So this is a bird that's called the Snowy Egret. And this is a bird that I actually have seen in multiple ocean habitats in the park. It can hunt in the kelp forest, and it can also hunt in the rocky shoreline and some of the tide pools here. So that was a bit of a trick question for you, because we can see these snowy egrets in lots of places in the park. A lot of times they'll be easy to spot because they are this beautiful pure white color. They have these beautiful feathers, and we'll be standing a lot of times on top of the kelp looking for little food. A lot of times they'll eat like little fish or crabs that are hiding in the kelp. Okay, here's the next animal that we have. So let's try to recognize this animal and see where it can live. Do you think this animal would live in the rocks or in the kelp forest habitat? So it is a type of shark, and it is named after a big cat. This is the leopard shark. So these are sharks that are on the smaller side. I would say they're just about a few feet long. Like the bat ray, a lot of times they are found at the bottom of the ocean. And these sharks can be found in multiple habitats, but we can find them a lot of times in this kelp forest. So that is where we can find these leopard sharks. And like the bat ray, I have also seen them in aquariums. So they're small enough to be kept in aquariums. Okay, let's check out the next animal. This is a super beautiful animal. So let's see if any of you can recognize what this is. What do you think this animal is? Oh, got flipped around. Hold on, everyone. Sorry about that. Okay. This animal is related to a jellyfish. This is the sea anemone. And this animal, it does kind of look like an underwater flower. This sea anemone loves to live in some of the rocky habitats here. There are lots of different species. This one we're looking at is the fish-eating anemone, which is really cool. It can actually paralyze fish with its tentacles. It has like stinging cells in its tentacles and capture fish that are swimming by. We have types of anemones in the rocky pools, like aggregating anemones, sunburst anemones, and even scarlet anemones, which are like bright red and green that you can find here in some of the rocks in Point Lobos. Okay, here's another animal that we can find. Can you recognize this animal, and what habitat do you think we could find this animal in? The rocks or the kelp? So these animals are purple sea urchins. Oh, it looks like someone's dad stepped on one. That is really unfortunate. They are very spiky, so I'm sure that was very unpleasant. So these purple sea urchins, they're like the porcupines of the sea. Here in Point Lobos, we have these purple urchins, and I think you can also find some red sea urchins too. A lot of times these purple urchins, I was just seeing them in some of the tide pools yesterday. So they can live in the rocks, and they also love the kelp forest. They are one animal that actually directly eats the kelp. So these sea urchins are one of the animals that are like the kelp grazers, and they are one of the sea otter's favorite foods. So they are an important animal in the kelp forest habitat. We also have this animal. This picture is taken from kind of a interesting angle, but try to see if you can recognize this animal. Where do you think you could find it? Yeah, it is really beautiful. This is a starfish, also known as a sea star. And we can see this animal in some of the rocky habitats here in the park. Like the sea urchins, that can also be found in the kelp forest. So it's found in a lot of different areas through the park. And we have sea stars in all different colors and even a few different species of them here in the park, whether they are purple, red, orange. They come in these bright, beautiful colors. Okay. So those, oh yes, and there is a fish to the right of this sea star. So yeah, great eye. You can see it kind of hiding in the corner there. All right. Well, thank you all for trying to play along with me and identifying these amazing animals in the park and thinking about what habitats you could find them in. Um, it is time to wrap up and say goodbye. But I wanted to give you all a huge thank you for joining me this morning, participating, asking those wonderful questions, and for your enthusiasm for looking at all the amazing animals and habitats here. I had a wonderful time with you all and hope you all have a great rest of your Friday. So thank you all so much, and I will see you next time. I'll leave you with the view for now, but thank you everyone. Bye.